Part 2. My mother replaced my wedding dress with her old one because she wanted me to honor the family tradition, but when my future mother-in-law surprised me with a designer dress, Mom lost it and destroyed it. Now my fiance's family is pressing charges and my parents want me to fix it. I'm standing firm in my decision to support Sarah's right to press charges. What my mother did was wrong, and she needs to face consequences for her actions. But I'd be lying if I said this isn't killing me inside. I always dreamed of having both my parents at my wedding, and the thought of walking down the aisle without them is breaking my heart. James has been my rock through all of this. He says that we can postpone the wedding if I want to, but I don't want to let my mother's actions control my life anymore. I've spent too many years doing that already. Update 1. Thank you all for your overwhelming support and advice. The past week has been incredibly difficult, but your comments have helped me stay strong in my decision not to give in to my mother's manipulation. A lot has happened since my last post. The police investigation is moving forward, and my mother has been formally charged with criminal damage to property. When the police interviewed her, she actually tried to justify her actions by saying she was protecting her daughter from outside influences trying to destroy our family traditions. The officers were not impressed. Sarah has been absolutely amazing through all of this. When I went to her house to explain what happened, expecting anger and disappointment, she just hugged me and let me cry. She shared that she had also dealt with a controlling mother-in-law who had tried to ruin her own wedding 30 years ago. But look at me now, she said with a gentle smile. I've been happily married for 3 decades, and that woman's attempts to ruin things only made my marriage stronger. She told me not to worry about the dress and that we'll find another one together. She shared stories of her own wedding dress shopping experience, and how she had to try on 20 dresses before finding the one. Her warmth and understanding made me realize what real maternal love looks like. It's not about control or traditions, it's about supporting and uplifting your child. After the dress incident, my dad finally stood up to Mom and told her that her behavior was completely unacceptable. He moved out temporarily to give her space to reflect on her actions. During this time, she started frantically calling family members, claiming I was destroying her life and that Sarah was trying to steal me away. While most relatives saw through her manipulation and supported me, a few bought into her version of events and sent hurtful messages. My sister eventually came around after I showed her all the threatening texts Mom had sent me before and after the dress incident. She finally admitted that Mom's behavior has always been controlling and toxic, but we were all too conditioned to see it as normal. The wedding is still on, though we've hired security to make sure Mom can't crash it if she's not invited. I'm trying to focus on the positive aspects, marrying the love of my life, gaining an amazing mother-in-law, and finally standing up to my mother's controlling behavior. Update 2. It's been a month since my last update, and things have taken an unexpected turn. My mother's court date was set, but before that could happen, she had what appeared to be a mental breakdown. She showed up at my workplace, wearing her old wedding dress, causing a huge scene and screaming about family curses and betrayal. The day Mom showed up at my workplace was surreal. I was in the middle of a client meeting when our receptionist burst in, looking panicked. Through the glass walls of our conference room, I could see my mother twirling in her yellowed wedding dress, throwing what looked like rose petals everywhere while screaming about family curses. The dress was even more decrepit than I remembered, with visible tears and stains. She had apparently tried to repair it herself with safety pins and staples, which were now falling off as she spun around. My colleagues watched in horror as she pointed at me through the glass, shrieking about ungrateful daughters and broken traditions. Security had to remove her, and she was subsequently taken to the hospital for evaluation. The doctors have diagnosed her with several mental health issues that apparently have gone untreated for years. The aftermath of Mom's workplace meltdown was chaotic. My colleagues were incredibly supportive, but I could still feel the whispers and stares in the days that followed. My boss called me into his office the next morning, and I was certain I was about to be fired. Instead, he shared his own story about dealing with a family member's mental health crisis and offered me additional time off if I needed it. The security footage of the incident was both heartbreaking and enlightening. Watching it with my dad and sister in the hospital's family room, we could all see what we had been trying to ignore for years. Mom wasn't just being difficult or traditional, she was clearly unwell. The way she moved, the disconnect in her speech, the wild look in her eyes, it was like watching a stranger wearing my mother's face. Dad finally admitted that Mom has always had episodes, but the family got good at hiding them and pretending everything was normal. Sarah, showing incredible grace, has decided to drop the criminal charges on the condition that Mom gets proper psychiatric help and agrees to stay away from me until she's stable. In the letter, Mom poured out years of guilt and regret. She wrote about her own mother's controlling behavior, about the day she wore the wedding dress against her will, and how she had promised herself she would never be like that with her own daughter. Somewhere along the way, she wrote, I became exactly what I feared most. I was so focused on preserving traditions that I forgot to preserve our relationship. She went on to describe her therapy sessions, how she was learning to recognize her triggers and control her reactions. She enclosed a small piece of lace from her wedding dress, not as a demand that I use it, but as an acknowledgement that she was letting go. "This is the last piece of that dress," she wrote. I finally understood that holding on to it was hurting us both, so I donated what was left of it to a theatrical costume shop. They were delighted to have vintage material for their historical productions. The therapist working with Mom has suggested that her obsession with the wedding dress was actually a symptom of her underlying mental health issues. I'm feeling a mix of emotions: relief that Mom is finally getting help, anger that her condition was hidden for so long, and sadness for all the years we could have had a better relationship if she'd gotten treatment sooner. James and Sarah continue to be incredibly supportive, and we found a beautiful new wedding dress together. Update 3. The wedding was yesterday, and I can finally say I had the day of my dreams, though not in the way I originally imagined. My dad walked me down the aisle, and while Mom wasn't there physically, she did something that showed real progress. She sent me a handwritten letter apologizing for her behavior and acknowledging that her actions were wrong.